Welcome to Formula One and Son. I'm Tom.
And I'm Oscar.
And today we're reviewing, Oscar, the Azerbaijan Baku Grand Prix.
In which qualifying was undoubtedly more exciting than the race.
Yeah, look, we if you haven't checked it out, we did a qualified review. And in terms of action and excitement, you might have been better off watching quali than the race itself. And quali went for just about as long as the race, actually.
Yeah.
Close to 2 hours with the red flags and what have you. But yeah, the race, Baku, it's interesting now. Baku's got a 50% record. The first race, everyone thought this is going to be exciting. This circuit's going to lend itself to mayhem and chaos.
And it was boring.
Yeah, but the next two really delivered on that kind of early promise of exciting races.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this time I think we saw, another boring one, quite frankly. A little bit disappointing. And let's, I guess, quickly run through some of the highlights. Valtteri Bottas had done a great job in the Silver Arrow to qualify ahead of his teammate Lewis Hamilton. And this time, unlike the other races where we saw...
Hamilton gets a good start. Well, which he did this race too. But he gets a good start, overtakes Bottas, and that's it.
Yeah, well, actually in Australia, Valtteri got a good start and overtook Hamilton, and that was it, right?
Yeah.
So we've seen the Mercedes overtake each other in the starts, but this time it wasn't to be. Valtteri maintained his start. Lewis didn't seem to fight him as hard as I thought he could have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, Bottas did fight quite hard, though. And did come out with that.
He certainly
did come out in front.
Yeah, he certainly didn't just let Lewis pass by, and then he had good race pace. Frankly, Azerbaijan's never been a great circuit for Lewis, but this time, he kind of kept the pressure on Valtteri throughout the race. And towards the end there, he did seem to be closing a little bit, but Valtteri really dominant race. You've got to say well done, and it's great to see he's now back at the top of the championship.
Yeah, but at the way this is going, it looks like just a Mercedes fight for the championship, and that's it.
Yeah, look...
Even at this point, Mercedes is so far ahead in the Constructors' Championship, as far ahead as they possibly could be. Well, no, they could have extra fastest lap
They
points.
could have an extra fastest lap.
2 extra
Yeah,
fastest
that's
lap
right.
points.
So, they've won now 1-2s at the first 4 races of the season. And look, you've got to applaud that. They're clearly dominant. They don't always have the fastest car, but they seem to bring that package together. They're not making mistakes, neither the drivers nor the team, and they're executing flawlessly. So, congratulations to them. Boo for us, because that makes it a slightly boring season, at least at the front.
Yeah. In the midfield, though, it's crazy, and it's very exciting.
It's really exciting. I was really pleased to see that the McLarens had a great race after being kind of nowhere, of course, in China, where they got collected by Kvyat and I think ended up retiring one or both of the cars.
Sainz retired.
Yeah, but this time they qualified well, and they had really good race pace, and good to see Carlos getting a good result. Lando, I was a little bit confused. They seemed to pit Lando
at the
kind
end,
of towards the end of the race, and they weren't going, but they didn't pit Carlos. And what was interesting in this race, and we saw it in a few events, is that medium tyre, once you had heat into it, was a really fast race tyre, but it was hard to get the heat into.
Yeah, but once it was almost faster than the soft.
Right. It was hard to get the heat into the soft. And we saw that really manifest what was looking to be quite an interesting back end of the race. You had Lewis catching up to Valtteri. I think Valtteri was catching up to backmarker as well, or Leclerc, I think, when Leclerc hadn't pitted yet, because he started on the mediums, running long. Yeah. So Valtteri was catching him, and then Leclerc pitted just as he caught up with him. But then Lewis was catching Valtteri, Seb was catching Lewis, and Verstappen was catching the lot of them as well. In fact, he was mighty. He was setting purple lap after purple lap in that stage of the race. And it was looking like we were going to have a bit of a battle at the end. And
Ricciardo crashes, reverses into Kvyat. And virtual safety car.
It was an interesting race for the Renaults. Obviously, a massively disappointing weekend at the end of it. Hulkenberg was nowhere the whole race.
Disappointing, though.
Pardon me?
Even at the beginning, it was disappointing. They were pretty slow.
They were pretty slow, but Ricciardo had pretty good race pace. He was overtaking everyone in that period. We were watching closely. They weren't showing a lot of it, but we were watching the deltas closely during the race, and we'd see Ricciardo. After that, the pit stops, he would catch one person, then the next, and he had Lance Stroll behind him for a lot of the race, but he started to pull a gap on Lance. Then he started to catch up.
And then at some point, Raikkonen started going very slowly.
Yeah, something odd happened to Raikkonen around there. Raikkonen seemed to have pace that just fell away.
And then he sped up again for a random reason.
And I think it was a disappointing race for both of the Alphas. They both made it through to Q3 in quali, right?
Yeah, but I don't...
And
did
out
any
of the
them
points.
get points?
No, both out of the points. It was a bit of a disappointing race for them. They didn't seem to have a lot of pace. But as Daniel went past all those cars, it really seemed like those medium tyres were working well for him. In a great turn of pace. We were watching live the Delta to Kvyat. We're like, he's catching. I did Kimi finish in the points.
Yeah.
Oscar's pointing out that Kimi did score a point. He came 10th. Apologies, Oscar. And he got that because of the Kvyat and Ricciardo retirements, right? So without those retirements, they wouldn't have finished in the points, I should say. Yeah, you're quite right. And so we saw Ricciardo catch up to Kvyat. We saw that live timings, and you and I were watching on the timer. I think they were showing the battle at the front of the time. The time got to almost nothing, the delta between them, and then yellow flag. And you and I were both like, oh, no, they've come together, and sure enough, they cut to it.
But not in the way we expected.
No, and it was an unusual spot for Ricciardo to pull the move, a bit of impatience perhaps. He did have good speed, but, you don't have to wait long in Baku to get that long straight. You're going to breeze by.
I feel sorry for Kvyat too.
Oh, really sorry. He was having a pretty strong race.
I don't
stronger
think
than
Kvyat
Albon.
would have got points anyway.
He would have been in the points, yeah.
Maybe 10th, I think.
Yeah, I think Daniel was on track for kind of 9th or 8th.
Yeah.
So I think he would have been in 10th or something like that. But yeah, Daniel obviously misjudged it, locked the brake, then went deep. As a result of going on the inside of Kvyat, Kvyat couldn't turn into the corner, so missed it himself and kind of got stuck.
Crash into the wall. He just kind of just...
That's right, but he had to back up. But Daniel found reverse quickly, and in the team radio with Kvyat, you can actually hear him saying, I'm having troubles getting reverse. So it took him a bit longer. Obviously, Daniel had no problems finding reverse, but he did have some problems looking in his mirrors. And just, actually, I've got to confess, Oscar, as a young lad, I backed a car into another car. I did a Daniel Ricciardo once upon a time, but I'm not a professional racing driver.
Daniel Ricciardo is about 15 million times more skill in driving.
Oh, yeah, easy.
I don't think that's very comparable there.
But at any rate, he did obviously cause them both enough damage they had to retire, and later on was awarded a 3-grid penalty for the next race in Spain.
Which seems a bit light, actually.
Yeah, it does seem a bit light.
But it does seem light.
Yeah, well, you see
especially
some of those...
after the drive-through penalty they gave Gasly.
Well, starting from the pit, right?
Yeah.
For Gasly because of that missing the weighbridge call in one of the practice sessions, well, let's talk about the Red Bulls for a second. They were also, I think, a surprise package.
Actually?
Yeah. Max has come out afterwards saying he thinks they were faster than the Ferraris on race pace. Well,
that might be a bit cocky.
Yeah, that might be. Look... Again, towards the end, I think he was. I mean, he was catching everyone quickly.
Yeah.
That VSC, though, we just discussed, came out after the Kvyat-Ricciardo incident, and none of them seemed to be able to get the heat back in their tyres after that. And the gaps
do
opened
have a
up.
good chassis, as you know. So they're able to obviously maintain their tyres for longer.
It would look like that, yeah. Time management is good. The Honda had a Honda upgrade this weekend.
Yes.
A new spec of engine that was mainly targeted at reliability, but also gave them a little bit more horsepower. But how'd that reliability work out for them?
Gasly retired.
Yeah, that's right.
Was that an engine issue?
Not quite sure what the issue was for Gasly. I haven't seen anything in the follow-up. We'll need to find out and talk about it the next time around. But, disappointing because actually Gasly was having a great little recovery drive. He'd been slapped with all sorts of penalties left, right and centre through the weekend. Kind of had broken some rules and had some issues. But then have that breakdown after he had recovered really well from starting from the pits.
And also, Grosjean didn't seem to have the will to finish either, except he didn't crash.
No,
the car just didn't have it in it.
Well, Ericsson wasn't there, right? So he was fired this weekend. But the both of the Hasses, I think, were a little bit disappointing. Again, we see them, although they weren't even particularly fast in quali, I don't think this time. But they're struggling. They've got some race pace issues.
Yeah.
I thought the Toro Rossos were looking good. But unfortunately, with Kvyat retiring, and I think Albon had some issues as well. He finished just outside of the points. Had actually hit early in the race. I think he hit a barrier, didn't he? Just gently.
Oh yeah. He kind of just tapped it.
Yeah. So.
And might I point out? I've pointed this out. Our last 4 episodes, I think now, all of them. Ricciardo is still following his streak of DNFs and actual finishes.
You called this out after quali where you said, this is how in 2018 he didn't finish in Australia, did really well in
Baku.
didn't finish in Bahrain. Did well in China, didn't finish in Baku. Was that the story? And he's done the exact same thing in 2019. So on that basis, Oscar, is he going to win Monaco this year? Let's hope.
Hopefully. Well, another part of my theory: did he reverse into Kvyat to continue the streak?
Oh, come on!
No, I'm just kidding. It did seem a little like when I first saw that. I'm like, wow, that's I guess.
One thing I'd like to point out about that, Daniel Kvyat's reaction, he did burn Ricciardo a little bit, saying, I'll get him a rear view mirror or something. But his response to it was really mature. He's pretty calm about
At least
it.
it wasn't Verstappen Ricciardo crashing.
Yeah, well, Kvyat and Ricciardo were teammates, of course, in the Red Bull days before Verstappen. And, Kvyat said, look, I've got respect for Daniel and, maybe he just needs to be a bit more patient. And that's good to see from Kvyat. He's got some good, strong driving this year. He's fast. He seems to have good mental strength, as I've commented on before. One other team we should call out is, and I will call them Racing Point just for a change.
Yay.
They had a great weekend. Checo qualified really well. Lance had a pretty average qualifying. But as we often see from Lance Stroll, he was much stronger in the race. He was kind of following Ricciardo through. And he ended up in 9th position. Again, he probably wouldn't have got that if Kvyat and Ricciardo hadn't come together and DNF'd. But double points finish for the Racing Points, really impressive.
Yeah.
Checo's always done well at Baku. We know he's had the most ever podiums, or maybe not now. Maybe Valtteri or Lewis now has that. Great result for the Racing Point.
Third last year?
After third last year,
I think it was third. After third last year, another really strong result of 6th, probably aided by all the DNFs.
Well, and of course, Lance Stroll was on the podium, wasn't he, last year? Was it Lance? Or was that the year before? Checo was last year.
Yeah.
So Lance has had a podium there. Checo's had a podium there. So, the Racing Point have their Baku podium team who delivered on that promise, which was great to see. So, look, overall, we saw a strong recovery drive from Charles Leclerc.
Oh, yeah, just might want to mention another time. Williams, slow.
But they finished... They're reliable. They had a very unlucky weekend. Yeah, they had a very unlucky. And weren't they hit with a penalty because they got
I think there was
someone's car in the pit lane. So 2 cars started in the pit lane, right?
Yeah.
Gasly and one of the Williams. Was it Kubica?
I think it was Russell.
I think it was Kubica.
I don't know.
And whichever one. I think it was Kubica actually after he shunt in quali, just like Leclerc did.
Was.
And as a result, they put him out too early into the pit lane, and he got a drive-through penalty for that.
He came last anyway.
Probably another example of pretty stupid rules with too punitive kind of punishments to them.
What's with all the drive-through penalties occurring with problems in the pit lane?
Well, look, you see what Gasly did. He missed a weighbridge and gets has to start the race in the pits.
Yeah.
Ricciardo backs into another car, causing an accident.
3-place grid penalty.
And a 3-grade... Yeah, that's... it does seem like some of the punishments are a bit mixed up there. I'm surprised he only got that. He loses some points on his license as well, as you do.
Yeah, and don't kill me, but I do not remember the Spanish Grand Prix at all.
From last year? Well, what we know about the Spanish Grand Prix...
Fast. It's quite a fast.
Well, and it's where they all do winter testing.
Yeah.
every race we've gone, next race Ferrari's going to be strong. They're going to start to show some pace. But unfortunately, we have yet to see that manifest. Arguably, Ferrari should have qualified ahead of the Mercedes in Baku, but on race pace, the Mercedes look good. And now we go to Barcelona, where the Ferraris in winter testing were fantastic. But how did it go last year?
Last year, it was a Mercedes 1-2.
Oh, fantastic. We'll have to find out what the statistics are for 1-2s, having 5 in a row now that they've got 4 in a row.
I'm looking at it now. I might start by pointing out that a Williams came 11th. I doubt that's going to happen. The other Williams came 14th, and 6 people didn't finish.
Wow, lots of attrition last week.
Including a Ferrari.
What about Ricciardo?
Ricciardo, he did finish. Hulkenberg didn't.
Yeah.
And Ricciardo finished 5th.
Well, we look forward to Spain in a couple of weeks' time, and we see if Ferrari
5th?
can, if Ricciardo can maintain the magic that they had during winter testing and find some of that speed. Otherwise, we could be seeing the season run away. Mercedes on top of the Constructors' Championship now with 173 points. Ferrari only 99 points. Yeah. Already a long way behind them. In the drivers, as we mentioned earlier, Valtteri's back on top by just pipping Lewis by 1 point. Bit of a gap then down to Seb, who is only 1 point in front of Max Verstappen. And Max Verstappen is in front of Charles Leclerc. So, Max is having a good season given the hardware he's been given, driving really consistently and cleanly and quickly. Yeah. So not the most exciting race. I think the lesson we learned from this weekend is tune in for those qualifying sessions because you don't know what could happen.
I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably quite a big F1 fan because this is quite a small podcast.
That's right. So Oscar, I think that about wraps it up. A bit of a short and sweet podcast this week because not a whole lot to talk about. We look forward to the Spanish Grand Prix. That's also in 2 weeks' time, am I correct?
Yes.
Yep. And depending on how qualifying goes, we might do a qualifying podcast.
One thing to point out, we have just gotten tickets to this year's
the Austin
Grand Prix. So we're at turn 15. So if you see us there, we might be recording a podcast there.
Yeah, that's right. So we'll be at Circuit of the Americas for the US Grand Prix, which is early November 1 to 3.
I think it's late October.
No, very early November, okay. I think. And, we just got our tickets, which is exciting. Yeah, down at the end of turn 12, I think.
Oh, turn 12?
Yeah, right at the end of the back straight there.
It might be, and we're in the grandstand. So
looking
see us there, recording.
Yeah, and we'll certainly be recording trackside, see if we can get some of those nice sounds in our podcast.
Happen to see someone who actually listens to this podcast, which there's only 200 people who do, we'd probably put you on the podcast.
That's right. If you'd like to be interviewed and give us your thoughts, and you're going to be at the Austin Grand Prix, reach out to us. We're on Twitter at Formula One and Sun.
And Reddit.
And we're on Reddit as our username is Formula One and Sun. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time on Formula One and
Sun.